Welcome to Channel 4 News. Today, I'm Petrit and I'll be your host. And as you can see here, it'll be a beautiful Monday with a pretty sunny. Oh, what's that? Breaking news. Baker v. Car kids just finally decided. So, and we'll be having our on-site reporter there right now. Gavin, take it away.
What's that? Yeah, sure, I'll take the case. All right, thank you, Petrit. So, my name is Gavin. I'm on the site of the case right now. And obviously, before we get into what the case is, or obviously the decision of it, we'll kind of give some background on like the impact of what the case could be. So, for those of you who don't know, the case is over legislative apportionment, which legislative apportionment is a process of dividing seats in the legislature, and it's based on population, which is meant to create fairness, basically, in the legislature. And obviously this can be seen with how a state divides itself into electoral districts. More specifically to this case, how Tennessee failed to divide itself into those legislative districts.
As previously mentioned, Tennessee failed to update its legislative district since 1901, over 60 years ago. This was made worse by how the population shifts over time in Tennessee led to an unfair representation of the population, with rural votes carrying more weight than urban votes. Fortunately, Charles W. Baker, a Memphis resident, decided to file a lawsuit against Tennessee's Secretary of State, Joe Carr. He argued that the old districts not being updated would violate the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, which ensures that no state can deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law.
As you can see here, I'm in front of the Supreme Court, which where cases are actually taking place, and the only reason that this case got to the Supreme Court is because Tennessee decided that the case was out of the court's reach or out of their scope, and that is only a quote-unquote political question, which are issues that courts consider to be out of their authority and to be resolved. There can't be judicial review essentially for those, and so Baker appealed this case to the Supreme Court. Obviously, it was accepted, and this leads to the overall question of the case being whether the Supreme Court has jurisdiction over questions of legislative apportionment. In other words, does the Supreme Court have jurisdiction over questions of legislative approval?
Finally, let's get into what the justices have decided upon. So essentially, it was a 6-2 decision in favor of Baker, and the court stated that the Supreme Court has the power to evaluate the issues that Baker and others raised. The majority opinion by Justice Bennon concluded that the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment would allow and warrant judicial evaluation of regarding legal apportionment.
So obviously, this opinion contrasts the opinions of Justice Frankfurter and Harlan, who dissented the argument that Supreme Court could make political question decisions, and they clearly emphasized and urged for judiciary and to have judicial restraint. But ultimately, obviously, the court ruled in favor of Baker. Now, some similar cases to Baker versus Carr would be Spelling versus Home, Cohen versus Flynn, and Carroll versus Becker, which all have to do with redistricting, which is a process where a state redraws its boundaries of electoral districts. Now, the only difference between these cases and the Baker versus Carr case is that the evidence they used to support these cases, which the evidence in these three cases was Article 1, Section 4, and Baker v. Carr uses the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment.
Essentially involving a lot of voting rights issues, it could pave the way for potential reform regarding voting and policy, and you could probably see this with a lot of like racial things, like I don't know, maybe a Voting Right Act in the future. Well, that should be all today regarding the Baker v. Carr case. For now, at least, we'll wonder how it'll play out in the future.